I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on March 8th, 2023 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukowski, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. A reminder that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families in the wider community who have united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? The next item is the Student of the Month, and I will hand this to Erin to introduce.
Student of the Month is one of the sections of the program that we thoroughly enjoy as part of being part of the school committee, and this is one of our most favorite things to actually participate in during our meetings. The program was established in 2019 by the school committee to honor exemplary students. Nominations are collected throughout the year from staff members at all 5 schools. Nominations are made through 5 categories: service to fellow students, teachers, or community, dedication, determination, and persistence in the face of obstacles, attitude towards learning, determination, high achievement in academics, athletics, or performing arts, and significant improvement in academics, athletics, or performing arts. Selections are made by the chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and 1 member of the policy and advocacy subcommittee. The March 2023 Student of the Month is Madison Clemenzi, who was nominated by Mrs. Ryan in the category of dedication, determination, and persistence in the face of obstacles. I'd like to invite Mrs. Ryan to come up and tell us about why she nominated Madison.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Madison Clemenzi as a reading interventionist and specialist. I get to work with students of all skill levels. Some students need to be stretched as students, some need intervention, and some just need good core instruction. I've known Madison since she's been in kindergarten, eating popcorn every day as her snack and working on her letters and sounds. She had always has a smile on her face. Over the years, Madison and I have grown as a team, moving her through her literacy journey. She brings positivity to all she does. Her eagerness to learn never wavers, even when challenged with tough new learning. Madison is a thinker. The English language doesn't play fair, and Madison is quick to pick up on the exceptions to the rules and tries to find some of her own. Throughout the pandemic, Madison participated in lessons via Zoom, doing her best and doing absolutely everything that was asked of her. She is very personable. She's well-liked and admired by staff and friends as the ray of positivity that she is. She's always asked, "How are you doing?" or "Are you okay?" and she really means it. When you look up the word positivity in the dictionary, you're going to see her smiling face looking back at you. She cooperates with classmates, teachers, and practices assertion by seeking out help as needed, being respectful to those around her. She is responsible, doing her best each and every day. She is empathetic to all, young and old, as she practices great self-control on a daily basis. Since meeting Madison, she has become somewhat of a thespian, performing in AOK programs through Newberry Elementary School's theater program and various port players in Newburyport. You can see her this weekend at the, what is it? It's City Hall. Okay, she's going to be in Frozen. Okay, so when Triton initiated the Student of the Month award, I immediately thought of Madison. for the reasons I've mentioned above. She's positive, she has a phenomenal work ethic, she's kind, she's confident, and she has excellent in her outside activities. She is a student who demonstrates the qualities of a representative of the Triton District, and I'm happy to know her and nominate her. And this is our Madison.
Germs.
Look at that.
Do we need to get a picture of your whole family? You'd be in the picture, not take a picture. Miss Yando, too. Someone's got to take a picture. I'll take a picture. I got you. I got you.
The next item is the oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segments will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the committee? Mr. White?
Can you hear me now? Okay. The following are my own personal comments. By the way, I'm Larry White. I'm the chairman of the Rowley Finance Committee. But the views expressed here are my own personal experiences, none of those to deal with the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, or Rowley in general. Change of pace. I would like to thank the Triton School and in particular the Snow Angels for the good job that they did Saturday in removing that white concrete from my sidewalk, walkway to the car, and my car itself. They did a tremendous job, and I'd like to thank the two young gentlemen that did it, and in general, the person running the Snow Angels. They've done a very good job, and I thank them a lot. You saved me a lot of work and a lot of back pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Would anybody else like to address the committee? The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains no donations tonight. There are planning approval requests for the 3 elementary school 6th grade camps and a final approval request for the high school arts students to see a Broadway show on April 19th, 2023. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Is this where you would have the discussion? I just have a question with the Salisbury Elementary being to be determined. Is that because they don't know where they're going yet?
Yes. And someone else had asked, we had talked about having all 3 elementary schools go together, all 6th grades go together. We ultimately couldn't find a single facility that could house all 3 6th grades at the same time. Well, there are places that could do it. None of them are schools that any of them felt comfortable going to. I believe Salisbury currently is looking back at Kiev, depends on who you're talking to, how it's pronounced, and Newbury and Rowley going to
Ecology school.
Old Orchard Beach, I know it's there. They're not going at the same time, though, right? So as noted, so none of the schools, since we couldn't have all 3 go together, they're all going separate weeks, even if they're going to the same school. So I believe it will be Kiev for Salisbury, but they haven't confirmed that yet. They're still working on that.
Just one other question. Is there a reason why Salisbury goes to a different one and not to the same that the other 2 go to?
I know the elementary principals with the camp coordinators, it's a stipended position, in the discussions that they've had, Salisbury, the staff and everyone there believes that the Kiev meets their needs as a community, and Newbury and Rowley felt like Nature's Classroom, it's not Nature's Classroom.
Ecology School.
Ecology School, thank you. Better met the needs and what they were looking for as a 6th grade camp experience.
Okay.
You need a vote? I know. Okay, just checking.
So any other discussion? All those in favor? Next item is the student representative report. Our student representative, Andrew Doherty, is now going to provide us with a report.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back following the conclusion of February break. I'm excited to update you all on the current student atmosphere and some exciting events that are taking place this coming spring. So recently in the high school for all grades, students and freshmen and through juniors have been receiving course selection packets that contain the possible classes they can pick for next year. And there's a lot of excitement, especially this year, with the opening of some new classes such as AP Psychology and Environmental Chemistry. And it's also the teachers who are also very excited to teach these courses. So as we grow all the classes we teach here, it's just great to see all the new selections we have here. So a lot of students are very happy with these selections, and we'll be finalizing them in the next coming months. For winter sports, with the conclusion of February break, the majority of winter sports seasons have come to an end. But I'm proud to share that the boys hockey team is still in the state tournament, D3, and are playing tonight at 8 o'clock against Linfield. So we wish them luck. Hopefully they win. And in regards to student-led organizations here at Triton, members from the Community Service Club have just returned from a service trip they took out to New Mexico to help serve the Navajo people. While they were out there, they toured some very, like the Grand Canyon, some very well-known destinations, and they had a lot of fun. So hopefully, since we passed the COVID wave, these trips can become more common, and it can broaden Triton's reach to outside communities. Additionally, I'd like to share that the Spanish Club is helping artisans in Nicaragua through a program called the Pulsera Project. So this is where the artisans send the students the bracelets they make, and the students sell them here at Triton, and the funds go back to the artisans. And it's a great way for just showing how much we care about the community. And this actually occurred today, with some bracelets being sold at lunch for about $7. So if you want to know more about that, you can reach out to Ms. Casasa, who's a teacher in the high school. Additionally, students in the high school will be hosting a March Madness event and a spring dance with the hopes of raising money for the senior-junior combined prom happening next year. And the student council is hoping to make these events an opportunity for students to show their school spirit more. And to conclude, I'm very excited to share with you that in this month, on March 31st, the Community Service Club will be hosting a senior tea event in this library for elderly members in the community. and they'll be providing food, beverages, and music. So if you or anyone you know have family members or friends who are considered elderly and like to show their support for the school, I would suggest them coming here and letting them know. It's going to be the first time since the beginning of COVID, and I'm sure it'll be a great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew? The next item is the Spanish immersion program trip. I'd like to thank world language teacher Michael Vanderslice for joining us tonight, and I'm going to pass this to the superintendent for an introduction.
So just a quick introduction. I know Principal Kelly is here as well, but come on up.
Yeah, sure. Oh, no, thank you.
So you approved this trip. Remember, it's a two-step process. So this trip is leaving after the end of the school year.
Yes.
This, with some tweaks, which Michael will talk about. We wanted to bring this not for action tonight, but just to make sure with the changes that it's still on course. And then depending on the conversation this evening, he'll complete the second part, obviously through the principal, and get the second part, the final details, and bring it back to you for approval next month. So with that said, Mr. Vanderslice.
Thank you, Superintendent Forget. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to talk to you all tonight. Thank you for having me here. I just need to update you on a few things that are going on with the program. So you have a couple of notes in the agenda about me, just a tiny bit about me. Before I became a classroom teacher, I was an outdoor educator. You know, somebody mentioned Nature's Classroom and these outdoor schools that some of the elementary school kids are doing. That was me. You know, I would be the guy that you would send, you know, your students to at some of these facilities. And I took kids on trips into wilderness and all over North America. When you do that, when you take other people's kids out into the wilderness, you need to be responsible for their health and safety. So I took a first aid class and loved it, and took another one, loved it, and then eventually ended up being something called a wilderness EMT. Somebody who is very skilled at taking care of hurt and sick people far away from a hospital. And working for facilities like Nature's Classroom, Outward Bound, the YMCA, different summer camps. I've been directly responsible for the health and safety of over 20,000 campers, participants, and adult staff visitors, and have given over 9,000 medical treatments in the field. I've also led a trip with the YMCA to Mexico, 3-week-long trip, 3 summers in a row, for teens just like our teens here at Triton High School. So having said that, really briefly, I'm new here, and you probably know more about the history of the immersion program than I do, some of you. So really briefly, the French program has benefited from a true exchange, where we go to France and then those same students come and stay with us, right? And on the Spanish side of things, it's been a little bit more fractured. The direction and vision and philosophy of each trip has varied with the faculty member who is leading at the time. It's varied from being more of a touristy trip to being more of a experiential education expedition, right? So I came here, and the pandemic had disrupted global travel. We hadn't gone anywhere in years, and now I came on the coordinator. So I polled all the students and found that Costa Rica was a top destination, and they wanted to do all those cool Costa Rican things like zip line through the jungle and see toucans and sloths and go on the beach and all that stuff. And I found a trip, and it was $3,600, and everybody told me it was too expensive. I want to go, but it's too expensive. So I made a partnership with this lady named Helene Wemple, who is herself a Spanish teacher in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And she lived in Costa Rica for a while and now has an organization called Live the Osa. The Osa Peninsula is our destination. So she goes to the Osa Peninsula every year with her students, and some of her adult participants and her chaperones on past trips have said, hey, I want to do this for my school too. So I found out about her organization through my colleague Jessica Sasa, one of our Spanish teachers, and approached her, and we have formed a partnership, and she's going to be our new host. The trip was significantly lower in price, and I also have some funds in the program budget, so I'm able to offer students a scholarship and get the price way down. The situation where we're at is the high school that we're teaming up with is Lincoln High School in New Hampshire. They had low enrollment. We had low enrollment. we had low enrollment, right? So we're at a situation where I have 4 really dedicated, ready to go Triton High School students, all right? I wish I had more, but I have 4. And there's 9 from Franklin High School. And based on what I know about these kids and what I know about my students is the group dynamics are going to work just fine. And I think it's even going to be a benefit that these students from 2 small New England schools, about an hour and a half drive apart, will be able to make those connections with people here in New England, as well as make connections with Costa Rican families. So, so that is where we're at. And I felt like I needed to tell you because the numbers are low, right? But I really think it's going to work out. And yeah, questions?
So can I ask a question about, so staff from the New Hampshire program as well as you are going? So now that it's a smaller group, what's changed as far as the way things will function?
Right, so we have a requirement here of 2 chaperones, right? And the way that the policies are written is that I should look for a Triton staff member before I go outside and look for another staff member. And if you committee members say, yes, that's what we want you to do, I can take another Triton staff. Jen Shangala is her name. She is a Spanish teacher, very dedicated, very compassionate, public school teacher in Franklin, New Hampshire. And I think it's going to work great if she and I are the leaders that come from New England and go down there. There's also support staff from the organization Libriosa, who works in country in Costa Rica to make sure our lodge is booked and is safe, arranges the homestays with the local families. So we have that support too. But I would propose that it's going to be just fine if it's me and Jen being the primary United States chaperones that go with the kids.
Yeah.
Yes, great, thank you.
Yeah. I think it's a great opportunity for our students, and with us only having 4 students, I think that should be fine for me. My daughter went on the French trip, so I know what a great time these kids are going to have, and I want to thank you for allowing them to have this experience.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, it's life-changing. These kids are going to learn more in Costa Rica than they do in a whole semester in my classroom. It just is the way it is. So thank you for supporting this program and being a committee that is willing to support this type of thing. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
No, I mean, I think this falls, kind of within the guidance that we've set forward, so I'm totally fine with that. I'm assuming there's no insurance, whatever's with.
No, it's rather than having 2 dedicated from Triton.
Yes.
We're just going to have, just Michael is the one from Triton, but as long as it's a Triton trip with Triton staff,
Yep,
all of those boxes
what I figured.
get checked with
Awesome.
it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And then if you guys approve that and go forward, then we're all set. And I will fill out the rest of that form and get it to you guys so you can check it off at the May meeting. We'll sign.
Great,
Okay?
perfect.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming, Patrick. Enjoy the game. Take care.
The next item is the mid-year student assessment data. Hannah Bates, Triton's Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, is going to go through the mid-year benchmark assessment data, and also will be sharing some upcoming events in curriculum instruction and assessment. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. And I apologize that we're no longer mid-year when I'm giving the mid-year update, but I was sick at our last meeting, so thank you for pushing this to this agenda. So we did talk quite a bit about data in the fall, and I know we've done an overview of iReady and how that program works, but just a reminder that we use it, and it's an adaptive assessment used 3 times a year in across the district in grades 2 through 8, aligned with both Massachusetts ELA and mathematics frameworks. And I did put a little bit of information on here about the, there have been some correlation studies showing very strong correlations between the mid-year benchmark assessment and then spring MCAS, so that we can assume that our mid-year assessment could be predictive of student performance. That's one of the benefits of having this mid-year, is that when we can sit down and look at this data together and respond to student data, we have that time between January, when they take the assessment, and MCAS. So iReady measures both achievement and growth, so we'll look at both of those things with this. So the first graphic that you see is reading achievement. This is for all of the students who tested across the district. On the left, you'll see that pyramid showing the percentage of students at tier 1, 2, and 3. And then on the right, you'll see placement by domain. So between the fall and then the mid-year reading benchmark assessment, we saw a reduction in 10 percentage points in students who were scoring 2 or more grade levels below, and an increase of 14 percentage points in students who are scoring at or above grade level. So that's what we want to see, is that red getting smaller and that green getting bigger. And then all students within those improving. In terms of mathematics, we also had a reduction in this case, it was 9 percentage points of students scoring 2 or more grade levels below, and then an increase of 19 percentage points in students scoring at or above grade level. In the domains over on the right, you can see still a relative weakness in geometry, but I think you'll remember from the all the school improvement plan presentations, a number of the elementary schools had a focus on geometry and have clear action steps dedicated to that. And although it is still a relative weakness, we are seeing higher achievement this year in geometry than we have in previous years at the mid-year time. On the next page, we sort of shifted from achievement to growth. And typical growth is the average growth that a student would, like an average student would achieve between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So what we're looking at here in this first graphic is way over on the right. You'll see 50% of the students have met their annual growth in reading by the mid-year assessment. So at this point, we would want to have our students at 50% or higher to guarantee that 100% growth by the end of the year. So we still have 28% of our students who are at below 19 at this point. But still, I think a lot to celebrate, the number of students who have already met growth. In terms of mathematics, we are at 30% of our students who took the mid-year, and these are students who took both the fall and the mid-year assessment, because you need that in order to get that growth measure. We have 30% of students who have met it by mid-year, and then you can see a little bit higher in each of those mid categories, and then 32% of students who are below 19 at this point. So if comparing the two, we're certainly showing some more strengths in reading and some opportunities in mathematics. All right, the next page is shows iReady growth. Let me try and explain this. So I received the question, how are on grade level students doing with sort of, how do we know that CKLA is the right thing for the students who are at or above grade level? We want to make sure that we're not sort of only supporting those students who are below grade level, but we're supporting and pushing all of them. So what this graphic shows is last year in light blue, and then this year is in the dark blue, and we're looking at the percentage progress towards annual typical growth based on where students scored on the fall assessment. So on the far right, you have students who started the year at mid or above grade level, and that is the percentage progress towards annual typical growth. So you can see from this that our students who are starting at or above grade level are growing more this year than last year, and also growing more than those who were below grade level. as well. So I was quite happy to see the difference between last year and this year. I think particularly in year one of an implementation, we sometimes see a dip. I think we're already seeing some impact, some positive impact from students engaging in these complex texts in every ELA classroom. But we definitely still have some work to do. I don't think the more limited growth in those that were 3 or more grade levels below is surprising at this point. We've already recognized that we have to do some work in building up those scaffolds to get students to actually access that higher level. So we have things in the works that are with getting some new training and getting some potentially new resources that are going to help support that. But I was pleasantly surprised to see the difference in growth between last year and this. And then the next one is same measurement, but in terms of mathematics. So we do see similarly a little bit higher growth this year over last year, and also more growth for students beginning at grade level. Are there any questions at this point? I can pause. I can try. All right, so, I think it's helpful. Okay, so in terms of typical growth, it's a scale growth for each grade and placement category, so that a student who starts at mid or above grade level may have a typical growth that's 8 scale score, like 8 points, whereas somebody 3 or more grade levels below might have 21 points that they need to make up. So you could have someone earn those 8 points and be at 100% growth if they started at or above grade level. But if a student who started 3 grade levels below earned 8 increased scale score points, they would only be at 30% growth. So that's why this also looks a little, they have more growth. Their typical growth needs to be higher if you start lower. So I don't know if that further confused things or made things more clear, but.
It helped me, but
Okay.
for you all.
It explains some of the like when you go in, it's not that there's no growth or the growth is declining, it's that they have more to do, so it's not maybe showing up. And if you made that any more in-depth, it would complicate things further. But yes, it clears it up that there's a reason that it looks like that, but it does mean that there's actual progress and gains happening. Mm-hmm. But
Yes.
until they reach 0 or grade level, it's not going to pop up.
Right, and I think one of the reasons that, so iReady uses 2 measures, this typical growth, and then they also set stretch growth for each student, because understanding that if they continue to make typical growth each year, that gap is just going to stay the same. So I think really using that stretch growth as a measurement and pushing students to attain that will help even this out a little bit.
My question was, is that, so is the typical growth sort of the growth that they need to get where they're going, or is that typical growth compared to other people who are starting at that point and how much growth they make per year?
The latter.
Okay, so it's scoring against students who are of a similar achievement profile?
Yes.
Okay.
Just curious, looking at the first page and the breakdowns of the different skills within reading and mathematics, and thinking about where that translates into the classroom. Does this break it down to a more granular level for the teachers in terms of what is it that's causing, like I'm looking at the comprehension scores specifically, what is it that's causing difficulty in comprehension, or is it more or less that's as far down as it goes?
This is actually the highest, the highest level. It does get much more granular than that. We had was it yesterday? We had a couple consultancies. We had a consultant from iReady come and work with 2 different schools and really kind of dig into some of this. So there are a couple reports that we're going to be rolling out some more training in for people, that some prerequisite reports where when you know the prerequisite skills that are required in either a math and focus unit or a CKLA unit, you can look at the data that's already there in iReady, and it will tell you who's sort of ready to go with that, who needs a little extra support that they can get within the regular tier 1 lesson if you just boost it up a little bit, and then who probably needs some pre-teaching before engaging in that. So it's all in here. It's all within the system, but we need to work on using what's here better. And every time that I go through an iReady training, I learn something new. So they're constantly developing this, and we just need to sort of catch our professional development up to where we are so that we can make the best use of all the tools that are in here.
So thank you for this, Anna. I always enjoy data and looking at these presentations. Obviously, like was said, very high level in here, and you're looking at a lot of different, like this is a huge grade range. Do you feel like the trends that are represented in these reports are kind of, I don't want to say are they universal, but are they trends that you're seeing across those different, kind of student groups that you would, I'm assuming it'll break it down by grade, by, are these trends that we're seeing in these reports pretty common across those subgroups that you would break it down into, or is there a wide variation?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. Because very recently, like within the last week, we've just gotten access to demographic filters within iReady so that I can run a report and see at any level, whether I'm talking about prerequisite skills or I'm talking about something like domain performance, how that works for our English language learners, our low-income students are. So I think you're right, this is a lot of data together. There's a lot that does get lost in an average, and we can break it down further. From my own, and just in the last week or so looking through this, I think it's, as I said earlier in this, that it's fairly aligned with our performance and state assessments too, that we do have some groups that are performing stronger than others.
Okay. Another question is, are all these students that are sort of sitting in those buckets to the far left on the radar of the schools, or is this process sort of highlighting new students that are moving on to the radar?
So we also just received our lowest performing group reports from the state. So every school gets their lowest 25% of the district. So what I've done is created a document that outlines those students and then the current interventions that they're getting. So we're cross-referencing everything to make sure that all of these students are on our radar and that we're moving them forward. Occasionally, somebody will look at it and see a name and say, well, that doesn't make sense, but usually we can look at it and say, okay, nope, they were sort of below grade level in the beginning of the year. We have them in this intervention, and but yes, we're monitoring for that.
Okay. I know that I cannot remember the word you usually use, but I know that iReady is like progressive, like it, as the students answer questions, right, it can skip some or move on to.
Adaptive.
Adaptive,
Yep.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. When we're looking at students that are sort of at the lower end of the range of students that you're applying iReady to and the upper end, are you finding that the adaptive stick points are the same for all those students? Like, are there specific skills that they're not getting in, say, second grade that are then sort of holding the students, I don't want to say holding them back, but kind of they don't have the foundation early on, so then even still in fourth and fifth, you're seeing?
I think I would have to look into it more to find out what are those sticking points, but it would be in here because one of these reports is our instructional groupings report, and it will put students together like these are the ones who are stuck on this concept or who haven't mastered this particular grade level standard. So I think I could probably find some of those sticking points, but I'd have to look more closely at it.
All right. Yeah, I'm just seeing things like geometry, and that's so broad, and it's taught in almost every grade. Like, I'm assuming it's not sort of a weakness in every grade. It's probably something at some point that was missed or didn't click, and maybe, yeah. So I'm just curious about that.
A lot of different subtopics in geometry, so that getting to the granular pieces of it, like, is it consistent across the grade levels, what we're struggling with?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about geometry in particular, I think, and even with the math teachers at the high school, we'll talk about that being so different, and that some students shine in that area where others don't, and conversations about pacing as well, because often geometry is the last math and focus unit, and even if it's after MCAS, like, yeah, they'll still get it, but I can tell you from being in the classroom too, that something always kind of fell off at the end of the year. And if that happens to be the same thing for students every year, we have to be mindful of it. So the math specialists have worked very hard to do some sort of resequencing and prioritization in pacing. And then also, as you heard about some of the initiatives that are going on at the schools, like Pine Grove has a little geometry piece every single day in order to make sure that that students are developing those skills. So I do think you can see that in the geometry domain, and hopefully we'll just increase that before the end of the year.
Yeah, okay. And in general, I want to say, I appreciate that you've taken the initiative to make sure that we're getting this data, because I think, obviously you identified some things very early on and have been able to start implementing them, but until you see, right, you can't know how to address it, or what needs to be put in place to help support it. So I know this is kind of the long continuum that we're on towards working with kind of the data that we have and the curriculum and the student body. But I just want to say I appreciate the fact that even though it is the long haul, we're at least making progress along that, because I think it's doing a service to our students. My last question for you is, I know that the fall was the first time that we communicated iReady scores to parents. Have you had thoughts, because obviously now there's going to be comparison scores when this next set comes out, just how you're going to communicate that? And I'm assuming it's going to spark some conversations, kind of what you're thinking about moving forward, in that we're involving families now, and it's almost going to change the conversation, I think.
Well, I think it starts the conversation, which is an important piece too. So we're going to be sort of sending families fall and spring benchmark data, and not at the mid-year point. So that was taken in January, and I think a beginning of the year, this is where they are prior to instruction within this grade level, and this is where they are at the end of the year, makes sense for families, but I'm also open to feedback from families and anyone else if we want to shift that at all. So I guess I'll need to think about what information we provide to families in that. But I think one thing that we can always communicate is that we do have these strong MTSS systems, that we are responding to the students who are in front of us, and also that this is one data point. And there is a lot of classroom data. There plenty of other sort of end-of-unit assessments. There are benchmarking, there are progress monitoring. I think we do a really good job of collecting it. So this is one piece, and I would not want any parent to define their child off of one assessment.
I agree with that, and I think it's a very valid point. I think with report cards being standards-based at the elementary schools especially, some of these pieces get lost in the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s, right? It's just, it gives you a very good idea about how they're doing with specific skills, but I think you can't have it both ways. You can't have big picture and get down to the details, right? This is a method that was chosen to get down to the details, and I fully understand that. But I think parents miss some of those end-of-unit assessments coming home, and they miss, the other assessments that are going on that are looking at kind of the bigger picture. So I think this is going to be a shift. So, and again, thank you.
You're welcome. Paul?
So my understanding of the way the CKLA curriculum is working, especially at the lower elementary, is that the students are spending less time reading in small groups with their teacher. And okay, I guess my question is, our areas of weakness by the domain here are in comprehension primarily. Is there an association there, or is that typically an area of weakness?
Comprehension of informational text and vocabulary are typically the areas of weakness. So in the lower grades, and this is a challenge that has been communicated through the implementation teams, through the reading specialists to me directly, that students are spending, they have foundations, they're still getting those foundational literacy skills in the early grades. They have CKLA, but they don't necessarily have the time to apply those foundational reading skills, or don't have the time built into the schedules right now to do that application piece. We have some teachers who in those grade levels who have kind of creatively found out how to do this, but it's something that is on our radar. We're actually meeting with the principals on Friday to think about how do we shift things a little bit to make sure that students are getting that time that they need in small groups for reading instruction. I am also really digging into the DIBELS data right now too, because I want to look at our mid-year data based this year compared to last year to see, is there an impact in that as well? Like, is that data reflecting the feeling that the teachers are expressing? I don't know if that answered your question. Should I continue? Okay. So on the 5th page, just looking at overall trends in both achievement and growth for reading and mathematics. Assessments show significantly greater achievement and growth in reading than math. We have a median growth in reading is 75% or higher across all schools. Median growth in mathematics is lower, ranging from 33% at the middle school to 76% at Pine Grove. And then as we just talked about, that students who started the year at or above grade level in reading and mathematics are experiencing significantly more growth than those below. And then the graphic on this page shows growth and achievement based on school. So this one is for reading, and I generally more concerned with growth. Like, high achievement is great, but we just need to see, even if it's lower achievement, that they're growing, and then achievement will follow. So that upper right-hand quadrant is high performance, high growth, and we have 3 of the 4 schools there, and Salisbury very close to that in terms of achievement and growth. So right now in the lower performance, high growth range, but again, not a bad place to be. In terms of mathematics, it's not looking as great. We do have 2 of the schools in high performance, high growth, 1 in low performance, low growth, and 1 in high performance but low growth. So recognizing that, yes, we have work to do on this, and we do have things in motion with our pre-K through 12 curriculum review team. I'm confident that we're going to have a set of action steps outlined to, and we're continuing to work on this. We just had Susan Resnick, our math consultant, spent the last week here. We have other things in the works, working with the math specialists and the initiatives at each school, but I think from that district-wide group, we're going to come out with a more comprehensive plan to address what we see here. But other highlights, sort of amongst all of this data, the CKLA implementation teams at each elementary school are reporting increases in vocabulary and then also engagement in nonfiction reading, which is a wonderful thing. We have high performance in reading at Pine Grove and NES, and then high growth at the 4 schools. And I did want to point out this last highlight is the median progress towards annual typical growth in mathematics was 90% in grade 1 at Salisbury. And this is a grade level that has sort of taken this initiative to get their students on iReady instruction for 45 minutes a week very seriously. They have done this. You can see the minutes that they've put in, and what that does is it fills in any gaps that they have so that their math and focus instruction is focusing on grade level standards. And then this time that they're spent on the actually on the online instruction piece is filling in those other pieces, and you can, and I love it when you can put something in place and you can see an impact right away. And I just wanted to celebrate that work that because those teachers have worked hard to do this. And in that same class, a 19-point decrease in student scoring 2 or more grade levels below. But areas for growth that we have across the district, I think we really need to support students who are starting off below grade level in reading to access their Tier 1 ELA instruction, and the same thing in math, really supporting those students who are starting off below. How do they access and master those grade level standards? And I think we also need to focus on Tier 1 and Tier 2 mathematics instruction at the middle school and at Salisbury to support student growth as well. Any other data questions before I issue my invitation?
I just had one question, if I could, Anna. At the middle school, do you get obviously, melting pot, right? Do you get a sense if they're spending more time trying to assess where students are at the beginning of the year than the other schools are, where they're receiving a student up a grade and are very familiar, obviously, with the kind of level of instruction that's going on in the grade below?
Are they spending, is the question, are they spending more time on assessment?
Yeah, trying to figure out, I guess, where the students are at. I mean, I know they have a curriculum to teach, but obviously you got students coming in from, in some cases, I mean, I'm just looking at the charts, like they're very different scenarios that they're coming in from. I'm just wondering if it's sort of, I mean, obviously they've got a set of units and material that they need to cover. But I was wondering if part of this, the kind of lower growth may be due to the fact that they're kind of spending more time trying to figure out where kids are at.
I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
Not that they're not assessing, but I believe that they're doing a similar benchmark assessment there. Yep.
Okay.
And they are doing some pre-assessment in particular domains, but not a pre-assessment for each unit right now, but that's something that we're exploring.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. Thank you.
I want to thank you for this data. I mean, I'm like Narissa, I like to see all the data and see how well the schools are doing. So I want to thank you for supplying us with this information. And then go on to the exciting news.
Oh, the exciting news, yes. I am thrilled to invite you to a number of upcoming events that we have in curriculum instruction and assessment. So we have a lot of teachers who are doing great work in a number of different committees. We have our district math curriculum review committee. We have our professional development committee, which has representation from all the schools. Social studies curriculum review committee, which right now is K through 5. We have our 6 through 8 pilot team for ELA. And then I also put in here a understand and respond to student growth data, which is in iReady professional development. So just if anyone's interested in learning more about that, this particular, it's a virtual PD to just understand that one particular component of growth data. And then I've also listed our new hire celebration on here. So if any one of you would like to attend one of these, you're certainly welcome to do that. I would just ask if I could let me know in advance so I can give people a heads up. And certainly if all of you want to attend the new hire celebration, you're welcome to do that. It's one of my favorite events of the year.
Would you like them to email you or myself, or email you?
Emailing me is fine, sure.
As to what ones you would like to?
Great.
It's not a requirement, it's an offer.
No, I think it's great because this way, when we're sitting around this table, you can really understand the work that the teachers are going through and how much in depth they go in all of these things. It will help us to better understand it to support you and the staff. I think it's a great idea.
Well, it was yours, Linda.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm very happy that you were receptive to this. I was very excited to hear that. In fact, I was very excited to see it, that.
I was very excited.
Because I actually thought you would be possibly putting it into next year. So when I saw it for this year, I was like, all of them will tell you that I was very excited this weekend.
Excited.
Saturday night phone call, excited. Yeah, Saturday night phone call, excited.
You're not invited. Okay.
Can I ask, I understand this is mainly for our edification, but just in choosing them, is there anything that you would look for from us as far as response that might dictate what we would choose, or?
No, I would say just pick based on either your interest or what you would like to learn more about at this point. They are all at different places. Like our math curriculum review is a little bit farther along than our social studies. And professional development committee kind of ebbs and flows as the year goes, but we're looking hopefully at an in-person meeting then to really start coordinating PD for next year across schools. So that's where we're headed with that one.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess I would just say, right, it's going to change the dynamic, right? Anytime I come into a meeting and the superintendent's there, as much as I hate it, and I'm not doing that, right, it changes the dynamic. So to have any school committee member sitting in the meeting will change the dynamic. So, right, everyone will do their best to mitigate that. So you can help mitigate that as best you can, I would say, right? So that's when you'll be able to see the most authentic discussions happening around the table.
But I think it's, on the flip side of that, I think it's an invitation for the teachers to see that we are committed to the work that they
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah. And it's not coming in to see,
Right.
but to see, right? So when you're making policy decisions and budgetary decisions, that it has real implications. And for them to see you understanding, right? This is the meat. Like you're seeing sausage made. That's important. So.
Yes. So I want to thank you, Anna, for opening this up to us.
You're welcome.
You got to wait for the Saturday night phone call.
The next item is the FY24 budget development. Since mid-January, the administration and committee have been working towards the final fiscal year 2024 budget, which will be voted on next week. The process of developing and refining this budget has happened over the course of 11 meetings, including 3 district communication meetings with all 3 town representatives and 1 public hearing. I understand we have a few more refinements tonight, and then we will have one last discussion to provide final directions to the administration. I will hand this to either Brian or Kyle.
I'll take this by the reins. All right. So since our last meeting, quick refresher is that we had the meeting with town officials on Thursday. And then since that point in time, we've continued to revise this. At that last set of meetings, you did provide us with the target when looking at the total town assessments, an increase in the $2 million range. The tentative budget had a $2,497,898 increase over last year. And so when approaching that, it's twofold. We look at our revenue assumptions, and then we look at our operating expenses as well. So I'll, just as a refresher, walk through all of them somewhat briefly. So school choice tuitions, we are reducing that charge there. That's the one where we had estimated $150,000 of a decrease associated with less students choicing into the district. But based on our investigations, we found that we could modify that assumption there for $25,000 favorably. Special ed transportation circuit breaker. So with the governor's budget that was released, it was indicated that with the Student Opportunity Act being fully funded, we would see an increase in the reimbursements from the state for the cost of providing out-of-district special ed transportation. So when we had forecasted out what our cost base would be for this year, and then the corresponding calculation of reimbursement, we were comfortable assuming an $80,000 of additional revenue coming in, but the mechanics of that is it's an expenditure offset, so that's why it's up here. Regular day transportation, that $136,000 represents 2 bus runs. We're down 5 runs currently. We would like to maintain 3 of those because of the level of operations that we currently have. We wouldn't be comfortable removing all 5 of those, certainly as we've seen. I don't have to say any more about that, right? So that 2 buses, one would be from Salisbury, one from Rowley, for the $136,000. Middle school library assistant, Brian spoke to that one, $45,000 there. That restores an IA assistant in the library. Previously, that role had been shifted over to servicing special education students, but we're looking to restore that. Charter savings, this is very similar concept to the school choice tuitions. After receiving updated state figures, we were comfortable modifying that amount. The savings on the dental renewal, $26,000, that, again, our rate renewal for next year was confirmed at a 6.3% savings on dental plans, so that yielded the $26,000 there. And then getting to the new stuff, so the curriculum assessment grants, we had spoken, Anna had spoken about the different opportunities that we had. Certainly, we're pursuing grants in excess of $65,000 that could potentially offset, but looking at the risk there that they might not come through. However, last meeting, we were speaking to potential $50,000 coming in. We were comfortable bumping that up to $65,000. And then this is a new line item here too, shifting costs to the food service revolving fund. This is specifically medical and dental plan costs. So the revolving funds by statute are supposed to be self-sustaining, all personnel, benefit, and operating costs. Currently, all health and dental insurance plans for food service employees are supported by the general operating budget. There's about 13 full benefit packages in the food service department that are being subsidized by the general fund at $20,000 apiece. We're proposing that 2 of those be supported by the food service operating budget. And the reason for not shifting the full cost over there is we want to, right now that program continues to expand like we've talked about in depth. Right now, with the way we stand, there's additional staffing needs that we've somewhat held off on because of the question mark surrounding whether or not school lunch is going to continue to be free for all. If it is not free for all, we do expect that revenue amount will dip slightly. We're optimistic that it won't go down too much. But the reason we wouldn't want to backfill or backfill the full benefit package amount is we want to be mindful of the program needs as well. I'll pause there on the expenditure side of things. Any questions?
So pre-pandemic, when there was no universal meals, the food service revolving often ended in the red. No discredit. I mean, I know they tried very, very hard to keep those in the black. And it was just, it's very common across districts, right? Not faulting anyone for this at all. But I'm just curious about shifting $40,000 more there, knowing that we don't know that universal school meals is going to go through this year. It's on an annual basis right now, so there's no telling about something moving forward, and shifting a long-term operating cost into that revolving. I mean, trust your assessment of risk. How much risk do you think there is here? Because it makes me a little nervous, just having had to close $40,000 previously sometimes to the general fund from this revolving. Now you're looking at potentially having to close $80,000 if we hit a year like that again?
Yeah, no, those were, thank you for mentioning that because it was long conversations we had. Looking at, I can't speak to the program as in-depthly because I wasn't here for it, but I can speak to the changes that have been made and the engagement with the student body in participating in free lunch and the meal offerings that we've been able to provide students as well. We know there'd be a dip, but looking at all of these different factors, we're confident. You can't absolve all risk, but we felt confident with that dollar figure that it would sustain that long term if we needed to.
Okay.
So can I just expand a little bit? So we closed fiscal '22 with a $350,000 balance, right? Those who've been around, we were usually closing 70 in the red, 80 in the red, 180 in the red. So close 350 to the good, another probably couple 100,000 this year. So as we were looking at this, sitting on profits in 500,000 profits, balances of 500,000 favorable, I should have been an auditor, favorable balances, right? Approaching 600,000. We're like, we have to, right? There has to be some when we're tapping 900,000 out of our circuit breaker, right? In all these areas, we have to put something. So that, right? Brian was going with a higher number. So we're ending up with a more modest number, right? Because at the end, it's 2 benefit packages is an easy annual swing as we go through the process. It can swing 5, and just as we're recalculating and numbers go up and down, that's in the whole scheme of a budget, it's pretty simple to move that back if we needed to next year. And what I wanted to say is, if we don't have free and universal meals, we're going to have to put it back, right? If not, maybe next year, maybe the following year, but we can't start drawing down, to your point, a general operating expense, with what would then be a one-time infusion that we've got to use systematically and strategically for equipment and investments in the program. Because, everyone said, Sarah has done unbelievable things. She just came back from Washington, and pictures with Markey and pictures with McGovern, and she is out there and fighting for this. So if it has a chance, it's a good chance if she's involved. So it makes some assumptions, but we would have to adjust next year. Leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So all in, the cost reductions there, a net of $367,705. The second piece being additional revenue sources. Chapter 78, we spoke to this, the additional $30 per pupil. Regional transportation, we had updated our assumption from an 80% reimbursement rate from the state to an 85% reimbursement rate. That certainly, there's been talks of that reimbursement rate being even higher, but where that reimbursement rate, to say it another time, fluctuates, not wildly, fluctuates on an annual basis up and down, in our reimbursement base is large. Those swings in reimbursement rate can have significant effects on our revenue forecast. So we wanted to remain conservative in our assumptions so it doesn't hit us unfavorably in future years. Same concept with interest income. We had, in the current year, $50,000 budgeted. We are comfortable with bumping that up another $10,000. In the current interest rate environment, we've been having favorable interest rates. One of our accounts has 3%, and so that would yield a $60,000 interest income. We could probably, same thing with fluctuations in that. We do predict that and forecast that those rates will hopefully hold over the next year, but we felt that was conservative, even bumping the $10,000. And then the last piece was the Medicaid reimbursement. That's where we had, this year, our revenue budget for that line item is $150,000. As part of the tentative budget, we had bumped that up 50 to a $200,000 level. Looking at this further and the direction that we're heading in, we were comfortable with bumping that another $50,000. If we look at our current reimbursements or our current revenues that we're receiving, they are in about the $200,000 mark. However, with these procedures that we're implementing that Shannon's put in place, the revenue we're projecting to go up even beyond that. So we were comfortable with that level. And still, overall, when you look at our total revenues as a whole, we're still in a comfortable position to weather any unforeseen events. So all in, the net of those two is an assessment increase to the towns of $1,949,103. And in that last box on the bottom, if you look at the impact on the communities, Newbury would be up 443,000 or 4%, 4.12. Rowley would be 992,000, so just a hair under $1 million at 8.54%. Salisbury, 512,000 or 3.47%. And I will leave it there.
Any questions for Kyle? You're on my mind, Brian. Go ahead.
Just the first upper level question I have, I just don't see it here, is with these changes, what would the full operating budget be?
Great question. So the total operating budget from an expenditure side, operating and capital, would be $49.7 million. What would be the increase? And that's an increase of $1.7 million or 3.65%. Not to get nitty-gritty into the weeds here, but that 500, the reason that number is masked, there was the $500,000 reduction right at the beginning from the use of E&D for that stabilization fund transfer. So that's why that 1.7 million might look lower than you would expect, and why there's the disparity as well between the increase in the operating expenses and the corresponding increase in the community assessments.
So it's really like a 2.2 million.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you.
I still think it's very disheartening to see $660 million getting infused, and this is what we get.
So.
I won't speak long, but Mass Taxpayer Foundation did a presentation for schools today and analyzing the budget. And man, it was a pitch for where all the money went in Chapter 70, which was really disheartening. They're doing the same presentation for the Urban Superintendent's Network tomorrow, the next day. There was no, those 3 bullet points that I had put out and, going all over the place. Absolutely, that's the way it should be. Didn't speak to those 3 bullet points, but in essence, that was the message, so. So just to follow up on, in having conversations, we had DCC last week. Was that last week? Yeah, last week. Time is standing still. Around the table, I would summarize saying Newbury and Salisbury were reticent to the fact or to the concept of reducing to the cuts, to reducing our operation, to reducing services to students and staff. Because one town, it's Rowley this year, is struggling. I did have a follow-up conversation with Debbie and Rowley, and certainly it's going to be a struggle for them. Absolutely, it's a struggle for them. 800 was the number they were working towards and making an assumption on. So, certainly as Kyle and I were looking through this, we want to make sure the number meets the needs of the district, is a balance of the needs, but also, what we heard last week was in looking at scenario 2 was it's about not cutting. And so we, Kyle used the words comfortable in making assumptions. Comfortable is a relative term, right? So ideally, we would see that 250,000 materialize in Medicaid before we started to make assumptions. And we would see certain revenue. So that's, the special education circuit breaker transport, pretty solid on that one. So it's these assumptions aren't slam dunks across the board as far as there are, whether or not they'll come true, but in true Kyle fashion, right, he's always a step ahead, and he's got, okay, if this doesn't happen, then we can do this. And, even on the revenue side, we're still assuming 85%. It's 90% for regional transportation. So if we don't adjusting that, because if we come up 50 shy on the circuit or on Medicaid, all right, we know we'll hopefully get that regional transportation, that will offset. So we try to find a balance of reducing our overall costs, the top box, with not just falsely deflating it with revenues, the second box, to get to that third box. That I think to have an aggregate assessment less than 2 million feels good, right? I mean, $2 million is a lot of money for these towns to absorb. And so it's a fine balance between making sure we're providing the services and also looking at every possible avenue we can, an extra 10,000 on interest income, everywhere we can, to make sure that there's no padding, which we'll say it a couple more times between now and then, right? There's not a lot of padding left. So this is all of that buffer in a $50 million budget, right? All in with all a $57 million budget, not 66, as some might attest. Right, that's not a lot of wiggle room. So it's tight, it's comfortable. We feel confident saying that this is the right number to you tonight. So this is a proposal that we would say, we feel comfortable saying this keeps all services in place, right? The only service that's changing is we're reducing theoretical buses that aren't running right now anyway. So again, just to reiterate anyone listening, these 2 bus cuts still means we reinstate one of the runs that isn't running at Salisbury and 2 of the runs that aren't running at Pine Grove. There wasn't any change in Newbury.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so no vote needed tonight, but if people are comfortable with this will come back to you in that 50-page version with narrative and charts and drive some of those good old-fashioned points home in the narrative this year. But, okay, thank you.
I would just like to thank both of you for putting this together and all the work that was put into coming up with this.
Yes, and huge thank you to Kyle. I mean, the work that he's doing on a daily basis, beyond being the father of a newborn. I've never did it while staying up all night with a newborn, so mad props. Doing a phenomenal job.
This way, he's up and ready for those bus calls.
Why go to bed? Just stay up.
The next item is the Student Resource Officer MOU update. The superintendent is going to provide an update on the memorandum of understanding between the district and the Newbury Police Department in regard to the school resource officer.
So I'm not going to go through this in extensive detail. I would say to you, first of all, I hope Paul takes a look at this. He had requested that this go on the agenda, and I think I knew he wasn't going to be here tonight, so we probably should have bumped it. But he'll have an opportunity to look. I think he just wanted to see in detail. I had reported it to you in last month's superintendent report that we do have an MOU. It had been, I believe, since 2012, since an updated MOU was put into place. In the transition from the former police chief in Newbury to the current Patty Fisher, this was on the docket. I had reached out, and so we already had a work in progress, but she made it a priority, and we have the document signed. So what you have is the signed agreement between Chief Fisher and myself, and then you also have a draftable that shows the side-by-side of the state template and where we landed has language added or deleted by Michael Joyce, our attorney, and a lot of it you can see focuses around the delineating what we still can do as a school, whether that be protecting information that an SRO has as a school official, and what he or she, there's two that are sharing now, can share back with the chief. For example, if something happens and it's school-based and the SRO is involved, he or she can't share back direct student information unless there is a police action involved, right? So if a student is arrested, obviously, that changes everything. But if an officer is involved in any other general school business, that information, a name can be, but beyond that, no other, outside of directory information, no other details can be shared. And that has been the case in talking with the SRO and the chief. That has always been the case, and that's good. So I don't think this changes much practice at all. I think it codifies a lot of the discussions that we've had. Obviously, unfortunately, we've had a lot more incidents in the last handful of years that have ridden that line, and this helps really clarify that anytime the SRO is involved, it's an appropriate involvement, and it's a fine balance. And I know there are bigger cities and towns where it's not working well, right? We'll just say it that. It is working well here, right? It's Officer Lucy, who's been here, and then Officer Tully, female officer who started 2 months ago, and is also came from Haverhill as a trained SRO. So they're tag teaming, and both of them are in the building, and depending on the day. So they have a great working relationship with the staff, and I think there's been some kind of refining and redefining to make sure that the contacts are correct, that it's not a staff member reaching out to the SRO to just call down. Again, Officer Lucy was a student here. He performed on this stage, so there's a comfort level, but it's just making sure, again, I think everything has worked well. This just codifies it to make sure that we're never getting into a spot where we're taking an action or steps or saying or doing anything that would have our efforts and their efforts conflicting. And there is, right? It's inherent. I don't remember the exact chapter and verse, but it speaks to a police investigation can't supersede our, our responsibility to make sure that under all titles, we're protecting students and staff and victims, bullying, Title IX, anything. So we have to proceed, and sometimes that does get dicey, right? Sometimes there's conversations because the police don't want us, and this happens in any of the schools, the police don't want us to say certain things, but we have to, right? To do our responsibility to make sure under any of the requirements by law, we're doing that. And then, we know when we get to a certain point, it may be that we have to suspend something and let the police jump in and do their business, and then we continue, but we do that jointly. And I would just say, I feel very confident in our relationship with the Newbury Police Department. At present, it was good in the past, and I would say it's markedly better right now. So certainly happy to answer any questions if anyone has any specific from that
Does anybody have any
comparison.
questions? I have a question.
Sure.
Under the salary and benefits of the SRO, it says that 41% of the SRO's school year base. Do we have to do that times 2 now?
No. So that's based on the percentage of and it's roughly 19,000. Yeah. So it was a figure, and it was just increasing, and then we agreed in this to just do the percentage that it is. So that's the percentage of the full-time officer's salary that they're here. So for the 181 days of the school year for the school day. So they're here for 7 hours, so there's 1 additional hour on the shift that we're not paying, plus all the non-school days. So that's where that comes from.
So that says, does that have to be negotiated every year?
Does it? Are you serious, or?
No, I'm-
Yeah, no, okay. I was like, I don't think so. Are you suggesting? Yeah, so it's just, yeah. So it's currently 19,000 and change, 20,000.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
I should say too, right, so we go way back, there was talk with the towns about having a joint officer. Remember, the whole idea of getting an SRO into the building was a discussion with the 3 towns, and it was then Chief Riley from Newbury who just said, I'm going to put him in and we'll cover the cost in Newbury to figure it out, and then over time, we just absorbed that cost in the budget, and so now that 20,000 is just a cost in the budget. And so therefore, all three towns are paying their portion of it, but they still remain a sworn Newbury officer.
It's well worth the money.
I would say yes, it is.
Okay, staying with you, Brian, the superintendent's report.
Shut myself off. Two quick things that I forgot to mention or to write in the report is behind you and around you, the art show, just to make sure you're aware. So next Thursday night, you can make, no. Yeah, it's next Thursday night. On March 16th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock, they're having their kind of opening. It's obviously here through April 7th, so it went up last week, and it's here through April 7th. But next night on the 16th, I think there's roughly 50 works from each of the elementary schools, middle school, and then the high school as well. So certainly, it's this would have been missed off a year, a district arts festival year. It's not happening. But there is the visual art show, so I wanted to make sure people were aware of that. Also, something I didn't write in the report, but just I know I've chatted with a few of you about bathrooms on this campus, right? I think it's, we've talked about it a lot. We're still waiting. One of the big thing in the boys' room is the partitions between the urinals, and I know that's a big deal, and sometimes I was talking to Patrick the other day, and there are kids waiting because they don't feel comfortable standing there in a line with 9 of them. So that's still a work in progress. And we say first week of April. Those should be in, and those will be fairly quick installations. So still waiting to make those improvements. And then beyond that, just continue to deal with vandalism. I was talking to Patrick the other day and talking with other schools, and it seems like everyone's dealing with it. Pentucket, right, brand new high school. It's just, I don't know the reason. We're doing our best to patrol it. We ideally would need someone outside of every bathroom to sign kids in and out. I know it's maddening, right? It's frustrating when you just want to go in and use the bathroom and leave, and there's things happening. So it's still a work in progress. I was just talking with Patrick about it yesterday. There are, I don't know which one, I think the upstairs one has a jersey barrier, a temp jersey barrier in front of it right now, just because they were broken fixtures and such. So until those are fixed, we keep it closed off. We don't have the perfect solution. Ideally, we would have a duty schedule that would allow coverage for all the bathrooms, and we just don't have enough people to do the duties. Honestly, this 286,000 square feet is so, and part of this discussion when we get accepted into the MSBA program, is just the use of this space, because there's so much wide open space that the coverage to be able to get from point A to point B is just so hard for 1,000 students on this campus. So just to acknowledge, it is a known issue. It's a work in progress, and Patrick and the team is on it. But it is something I just want to make sure you're aware of. In the written report, just to confirm, preschool and kindergarten enrollments. We have registration happening. All the information nights happened. All the pre-registration has happened. We will be asking families to register online fully. You remember last year, parents registered, kind of did the confirmation of their information in Aspen. We're now moving to full online registration. And so we're going to be rolling that out starting March 27th, I believe you said, with both preschool and kindergarten. Again, kindergarten is no longer a fee, so that makes everything so much easier. And this is also the first time that we have Molly Adanasoff, who we added as our early childhood coordinator this year, along with the EI work she does, where she has been fully in charge of this process, and it's gone well. I wanted to report to you, it was actually, who was it? I think it was Steph at Salisbury. He said, hey, how come we never invite our Whittier friends, our Whittier graduates back to do the senior walk? And what a great idea. And so we're going to also invite Essex North Shore students. So still working out the logistics. Whittier graduates Thursday. The senior walk is on Friday, and then our graduation is Saturday. So trying to, just to make sure logistically, we have students who aren't owned by any school any longer and aren't the responsibility of any school, which is always an interesting venture. So working with Maureen at Whittier and Heidi at Essex Tech to fit, whether it's parents bring them to the schools, the idea is not we bring them on this campus and they travel with our students. That's a firm no. It would be Whittier and Essex Tech help get those students to the location so they can participate. So I know in different schools, there's been some St. John's kids who have come back and just by coordinating with the principals at the elementaries, but we'd love to make that formal. Budget development process, I don't think I have to add anything about that. We've spent lots of time. Just to note, I did go to the national conference. It's my first time going to the conference. The theme was Leading for Impact. And it was an amazing opportunity to sit with superintendents from across the country and in one breath, in some conversations feel like, wow, Massachusetts has it so put together. And then in other conversations think, wow, we are so far behind in prioritizing what matters. And so it's, I noted here, Stephen Covey, who's the son of the 7 Habits, Stephen Covey, and his book is Trust and Inspire. So this concept of leadership that's built on trusting and inspiring others and not the command and control. And it's certainly I walked away, lots of conversations with colleagues locally and from across the country on how you do that, because it's really hard. It's really hard to inspire people right now because people are toast. And so, some good thoughts and some work being done in partnership with districts and even some outside groups and consultants on engagement that I want to hopefully tap into, and you'll see the fruits of that in the coming months and years. Safety update, and just the last thing to note there, that Rowley and Newbury, I think some of you are aware of this, oftentimes at this campus, depending on where people are, where resources are, we might have the Rowley Fire Department on campus before we have the Byfield Fire Department. They're closer, but they could be elsewhere. So it made sense. The Rowley chief, Scott Dumas, and Patty Fisher, the chief in Newbury, since the moment she took the helm, what do you take as the chief? As soon as she took over, they started working together, and so they were training on this campus as what would be the first 2 resources to respond in any event. So classrooms, locations, just knowing the building. So it's great. It's wonderful to have the 2 departments working together. They're not working with Salisbury. Salisbury is obviously much further away. So this discussion's about working that in as well. It's just going to be over the river and through the woods. They're not going to be the first ones, so right? It's going to be Salisbury and Newburyport and Amesbury who would also be providing mutual aid, but it's going to be Rowley and Newbury who are going to be, one of the 2 of them is going to be the incident command if an event happens. So yeah, just wanted to note that and make sure you're aware. And then this is the personnel report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I just want to say I think it's fantastic that you're inviting Whittier and Essex as well.
I love it, and I wish I thought of it. Steph Maynard, it was her idea.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian?
I'd just like to add, I'm glad to hear, the administration is, recognizing the problems in the bathroom. Because I know that me and my friends, or, just the larger school community, it's often, the joke or sort of, the dreading, fear, I have to use the bathroom, but I can't go upstairs, can't go downstairs, I have to go to the library. And unfortunately, it shouldn't be like that in a place where, you have to spend all that time thinking about where you have to use the bathroom and not what you have for homework or stuff like that. But I'm glad, we're progressing, and hopefully we can, solve that. But thank you for addressing that.
Absolutely.
That's a big change.
And I think part of this has to be us sitting with students and saying, how do we change this, right? So adults can't fix it, and you can't fix it, but maybe collectively we can to figure out why. I mean, no, it's not easy. There's always a remedy to lock them down and all that, but the remedy should be figuring out why are people doing this in the first place. And there will always be some, but it's way too much. So, well said, Andrew.
The next item is the statement of interest submission, and I'll hand this to Narissa.
So I think we're giving Brian a break from talking here for a minute. So I'm going to recap kind of how we got to the statement of interest again. So for many years, we've been talking about the needs of this campus. The district commissioned a facilities assessment by Habib and Associates, which was presented to both the committee and the towns in 2021. We had building tours, we had quite a bit of discussion, and in the end, all 3 member town select boards agreed that the district should move forward with an application to the Mass School Building Authority to request a partnership through their core program to address the building needs last year. Last spring, the school committee approved the application submittal, and the district made it through the initial cut, and we received a senior site visit last October. Unfortunately, rising construction costs meant that the building authority could not accept as many projects under its statutory funding cap. And in December, the district was notified that it was not accepted. So they typically accept somewhere in the high teens as far as numbers of projects. And just because the costs have risen so much and they have this cap, they could only fit 10 projects under that cap last year. We were encouraged to apply again, and that's what brings us here today to vote a second submittal. So submitting the application doesn't lead to any specific financial outlay on our part or on the town's part. It simply lets the building authority know that we're interested in partnering, and that if we're accepted, a building committee will be created to begin the process of studying the possibilities for updating this building and this campus. And that's where we're at today. The application itself is very, very similar to what was submitted last year, because the feedback was that the application was good. It was just the situation that the building authority found itself in. And I'll hand it back over.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, so you have the draft as it was submitted, because you can't print it out nicely until you submit it. The only thing I'm changing is updating some dates, obviously, is through the process in meeting with them directly, the MSBA team, we identified that discussion about could we look at a consolidation of grade 6 over with the existing space? So again, not committing to anything, but saying we'd be interested in exploring that. And again, we thought when it came up in that discussion, it felt like if you say yes, it's one more positive to say, sure, you'll consider anything. So that's noted in the first section where it just talks about the fact that it asks if you are talking about consolidation, whether it's a new consolidation, and we said no, but we have to submit 2 SOIs, one for the middle school, one for the high school, because they each have an LEA code. They're independent schools. They just share the same campus. So I added a sentence or 2 in there just saying it's currently already a joint consolidated campus, but we've talked about and willing to consider bringing 6th grade up if space allows and it's feasible and stuff. So other than that, it's identical to the 2 documents that you have in your packet from last year.
Okay. I will make a motion for the high school, having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2023, prior to the SOI submission closing date. The school committee of the Triton Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated March 2023 for the Triton Regional High School located at 112 Elm Street, Byfield, Mass., which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roof, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs, and replacement of or in addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved location requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, I would also like to make a motion for the middle school, having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2023, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the school committee of the Triton Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated March 2023 for the Triton Regional Middle School located at 112 Elm Street, Byfield, Mass., which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Replacement, renovation of, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decreasing energy-related costs, and replacement of an additional to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved location requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you. And yes, that had to be word for word.
Okay, I did miss.
A word?
No.
I was just going to say.
Nervous is like, no.
This was if anybody would like to add anything to, for future agenda items. Nobody? So I want to make sure that I put that in there.
It's a good strategy to wait till 8:45 to ask that, though. Just saying.
The next item is the 2023-2024 school year calendar. This is our second discussion on a calendar for next year, and the superintendent is going to briefly start us off by going through the draft.
It's called leading the witness. So the calendar that you have before you has a few changes based on the conversation we had last month. We talked about the use of professional development days. We talked about half days. We talked about the mental health day. Particularly the concerns around the mental health day were up against that. The 2 half days for, as it will be this year, the 2 half days for parent conferences in March. So with that said, based on the feedback, what this calendar does is roughly the same. It's starting after Labor Day, so the first day of school is on September 5th. It puts all 3 of the PD days. The first one is used for convocation, and then the 29th and 30th would be full PD days for staff. That is the 3 additional days that teachers work outside of the 180-day school year. The 31st, I marked it red just because I can't say schools are closed because they're not. All year-round staff are working and teachers will largely be in their classrooms, but it's not a school day for students and no teachers have to be here. We then have the Labor Day week, Labor Day weekend, and then students start on the 5th. We then we took the 2 half days that were in May. I believe we had them on the 3rd and the 17th of May. We now have just 1 on the 10th of May. That additional half day went back to October, which is where we did have that additional full day. So now we have, from October through May, we have 1 half day every month for those 8 months of the year. In addition, the Mental Health Day is not included on the calendar as a mental health day, but what everyone loved this year, and in talking with folks, it's now on Friday, the 22nd of December. It would have been a very short winter holiday break next year. So what we did is we're ending on the same day, right? The 180th day is the 13th of June, and the 185th is June 21st, because that gets bumped out one day because of Juneteenth. So we're still ending on the same days, but we added that, basically the mental health day moved from the March to extending the winter break. So we'll have a half day on the 21st, and then that Friday, the 22nd off. Other than that, I believe everything, those are the only things that we were discussing as far as the full PD days, the mental health day, and we moved it to December. So that is what is being proposed to you as the calendar for next year tonight.
I like it.
I would drop the mic, but I break it. Done.
You need to,
I was just going to say, I see a higher likelihood for a snow day in March next year then.
Yeah.
and I think the staff will like that Friday because their kids in most districts have to go to school and they have a day to themselves.
Yes. Lots of jealousy, especially for the parents who have to work when their kids are home. Just saying, I'll talk to your superintendent.
I have lots of clerical work I can do.
I just have one quick question. This is an Anna question. The half-day PDA day in October, do you have concerns about attendance in that? I know we struggled with half-day PD days on Friday anyway, somewhat with attendance, but with a Monday holiday, I just kind of looked at that and I was like, eh.
I don't think any greater concerns than any other Friday. I think the people who fall sick on Friday PD days are going to, whether it's before or after a long weekend.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was the same way it was last year, too.
Was it?
Because I think we had that same discussion.
Could be.
Does anybody else have any? Go ahead, Paul.
I have several questions. The first one is, I asked last month about the PD days before, all three of them being before Labor Day versus in the calendar. And the response was that they're more effective in the calendar than prior to Labor Day. We've also talked before about the effectiveness of PD days on Friday afternoon being less effective than other points in the calendar. And so I look at this and I see a calendar that is loaded with PD at less effective times. That's a concern to me, that we're devaluing the PD by where we place it in the calendar. My second concern is, saying, okay, the mental health day in extending December break. But there's actually research on the long breaks versus the 3-day weekends, and the 3-day weekends are more rejuvenating for people than the long breaks. And March is long. You just said it, that it's hard to inspire people right now. March is a grind for everyone who's been in schools. There's circadian rhythm research on children that shows that the 3-day weekend is long enough to rest and recover, and the 2-day weekend is not. In fact, it throws the circadian rhythm out of whack because sleep in, stay up late, whatever for 2 days. But your brain doesn't actually do the resting it needs to recover from the stresses it has. Half days are great for kids in a way, but we still throw them into their morning routine, which is not, for elementary kids, is not a routine that's natural, it's stressful. And for the upper students, those morning routines happen way before their circadian rhythm is ready for them to be awake. When I talk about that mental health day, it really is a mental health day. We talk a lot about the mental health of our students, but the mental health of our students in part is negatively impacted by the structures they live under. We don't live in structures that are healthy for the development of children. And if we can't even find a day in March or in April when it's long and it's hard to say we're valuing your mental health, we can only do these other tangential things to help you manage the fact that the environment that you live in is stressful? Are we really valuing mental health?
I just want to present the counterpoint to that, which I will be 100% there with you on school start times and, a lot of the other stuff. But I have to say that having the Monday mental health day where it's sitting right this school year, which is where one of the places that have been proposed, is more stressful for elementary than it is to go to school that regular day. I mean, that's what we're hearing from families this year is that, and I made this point last year, when you add that extra day in, it becomes more stressful on elementary student and family schedules than it does not having it. And I think I said this last year, like that's half of our district is sitting in our elementary schools. And I appreciate all the research, but like what we're actually hearing is that that's not beneficial. And maybe it's just the timing, but I don't think we can overlook that and just say the research shows when we're hearing the opposite from the families actually in our district.
I would say they don't know yet. We haven't hit it yet. We have not done it one time yet. We know that, yes, finding childcare or finding time from work can be hard for parents. But we don't necessarily know the impact that has on the children in relation to a day off. We haven't lived it.
I would say that when you look at 2 half-days messing with their normal schedule, and I would agree, like, in the perfect world, would a half-day be mornings off and then come in the afternoon to try out? There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but when we look at putting a mental health day on a day in March, those children under the age of 12 or 10 that may not feel confident staying home by themselves may get placed anywhere that works. That can be a huge stressor, especially when you're going in, that should be a month where there's almost no change to their schedule, and there's 2 half-days for conferences, so their parents are juggling. The stress of a parent looking for care can be just as damaging as, I see both sides of it. I agree. 3-day weekends, you have me like all around, because that's long-term research and education. But when we talk about a mental health day that we're placing, not every child is going to need a mental break at the exact same time. And not every family can handle the workload that it would require to put a mental health day on one day on a calendar that we decide a year plus in advance. So my concern with it is that, yes, is it useful? Can it be utilized better? And until then, should we hold off? I agree we need them, but I don't know if we are implementing them to the best impact of all of our students.
To that point, is it possible to grant an excused absence that could be used as needed?
That's really hard when you're trying to work on. It's really hard to figure that out if everybody's taking it on a different day and making sure that somebody's not missing the curriculum.
It's much different for students than it is for staff, right? So the mental health day is universal. We don't have excused absences for staff. We have sick days and personal days and vacation days. So conceptually, I like it. I think in actuality, it becomes problematic. Yeah. I was shocked. I was just going to say how many people said to me, if you're worried about my mental health, let's get me out one day sooner in June. So there were a lot of people who just literally said, yeah, I get that. I want to just trudge through March when it's, right, it's the new winter. So apparently winter is January through April now. So like trudge through the winter, and then when the sun's shining, I want to be outside and not here. Not when it's hot, I don't worry about that. Just when the sun is shining and the birds are chirping, I want to be outside running around. So that was a loud chorus of individuals who shared that sentiment with me.
Yeah, I think no matter where you put the mental health here, mental health day, families are going to have issues with it. Some are, some aren't. Some staff will, some staff won't. So I think Brian and his team have tried to minimize how it would affect families and students. And putting it, I've heard from several families that actually like the December one where you put it where it was last year. I don't think this is an easy thing one way or the other that's going to please everybody. And you just do the best you can. And I appreciate all the research that you've done, Paul.
Can I make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 school year calendar as presented?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Those that are opposed? The next item is the Whittier Regional High School vacancy. Per Whittier Regional School District's regional agreement, the Triton School Committee is responsible for appointing the Newbury, Rowley, and Salisbury representatives to their school committee. In January, we were notified that Newbury's seat on the Whittier School Committee, which is currently held by Joanna True, was up for renewal. We advertised for letters of interest, and Joanna True was the only one who submitted a letter. That is attached. She could not be here tonight because Whittier School Committee is also meeting tonight. Is there any discussion before we move to a motion? Can I have a motion to appoint Joanna True to the Newbury seat on the Whittier Regional School Committee for the term running from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2026?
I'll move as stated.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say?
She'll second it.
Wow, you threw me there. Any discussion? All those in favor? Subcommittees, Policy and Advocacy, Paul Goldner.
We met earlier today. We spent the bulk of our time discussing a new policy on enrolling students. Expect to see something on that in the next month or two. We're also continuing to talk about the superintendent's evaluation. I think we'll have a recommendation coming soon on that for the evaluation, as well as some other tweaks to policy on attendance and handbook changes on attendance. Our next meeting is in April, currently, I believe, April 12th. We might move that back a week earlier to be ahead of the meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Finance, Paul Mayette.
We met last week. We've been continuing to look at the tighter budget this year. Certainly not the wiggle room that we've had in the past few years, but discussion came up with the, feeling confident that we would not be looking at any of the methods of the past, looking into E&D to balance a budget or anything along those lines, that we'll have the cash on hand to meet our obligations. And we meet again on the 30th.
Personnel and negotiations, Paul Lees isn't here, but Susanna.
We are continuing to meet with TRTA and B, Unit A and B. Our next meeting is March 16th.
Thank you. The next meeting that we have is March 23rd, which will be here at Triton. It's
Next Wednesday. final budget school.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I know you want to fast forward me too.
We have a meeting next Wednesday, but also March 23rd, which will be here at Triton, and it's going to be with our legislators. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I just want to thank all of you for being here. And it takes a village, as we see with this budget. All those in favor?